Hello everyone and welcome to Stan the Wine Man TV. I'm your host Stan the Wine Man, Stan Bertan. Setup, Stan Bertan aka Stan the Wine Man. And this is a blue collar wine show where I try to help you spend your wine dollars wisely. It's the fall. A lot of times in the fall when we're doing stews and different types of foods, we do lasagna, we do spaghetti, we do all that stuff. We think Italian wines. In fact, I know at the store, Italian wine sales go up in the fall and winter time because people, that's just the wine, the rusticity, the tannins, all that stuff lends itself towards comfort foods. And fortunately, we haven't totally gotten away from the whole wine and food pairing. I know the millennials, you millennials out there, like to drink wine, just take a bottle home and quaff it down. That's great, I have no problem with that. I do it myself. But we must never forget the need to match food and wine. It's a beautiful thing. It really is. It's good for your digestion, it's good for your health. All of that is incorporated. Now I got a little bit of action here with the decanter, and I'll explain that later, why I have one of these things. I haven't had one of these in the show in a while, but one of the wines I'm doing today kind of like lends itself towards decanting. What we're going to do today, though, is not, well, you probably all know about Chianti. Chianti is usually 70 to 100% Sangiovese. They'll put Caniolo in there. They've allowed a couple other varietals into Chianti that they hadn't in the past. Cab and Merlot are one of them. But what we're going to dabble into today are wines that have the Toscana or Tuscan moniker, but they're not labeled Chianti because they have a little bit more of Cab or Merlot or Syrah than is allowed to be labeled Chianti. So we have a Super-Tuscan here. That's what they originally labeled them. They called them Super-Tuscans because they didn't really have a name for them. They couldn't call them Chianti because they had all these other varietals. There was a couple of Mavericks that said, hey, we don't want to stick to this, Sangiovese, Caniolo sort of blend, and so they started putting Cab and Merlot in there, and so they came up with the moniker Super-Tuscan. And it kind of stuck. There's a few. It became really popular. So there's a few out there, and they have all kinds of price ranges. So let's get started with one from Bonfi. Bonfi is a big-time Italian producer. You probably have seen that on many Italian labels. And this is one that I've always been intrigued by. I haven't really spent a lot of time tasting it or getting into it, but we sell quite a bit of it. It's Col di Sasso, Toscano, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Sangiovese 2012. Now you notice it puts the Cab ahead of the Sangiovese, so it obviously has a little bit more Cab than the Sangiovese. And there's a label, and perhaps you've seen it. It takes my camera a minute or two to lighten up. There it is. And this rolls in at $10. So this is like one of those wines you might, go to and say, hey, there's $10 Italian wine. Let's pick it up. But before you pick it up, let's see what we get on this wine. Do a little rinse here. $10. Let's see what we get on the nose. So immediately get like that, a wet leather nose. Some currants, some red flowers, a little bit of tobacco for sure. It has a sweet element to it, a little fruit forward. But mostly the prominent smell out of this one is kind of a wet leather smell. Let's see what we get on the palate. Not too bad. There's a nice currants there. Not a lot of old world to this one. A little touch of minerality on it, which is interesting. kind of a roundness. You get a little bit of tobacco, a little bit of black olive, currants, cherries, for sure. Nice mouthfeel. You know what? I should do that on my words of wine to mouthfeel. Well, you know what I mean. It's not. There's no grip. Silky tannins. In other words, it doesn't like cause your mouth any trauma. I guess it's no trauma of the mouth. You know, sometimes when you get big tannins or that dirtiness, you know, it's like it makes you pucker up a little bit, or you know, makes your mouth react. This one is just very smooth. There isn't a lot of layers to this. In other words, it's not very complex, but it's very delicious. I can see why this wine would be one you'd pick up. Great hamburger wine, great pizza wine, great spaghetti wine. I'm liking it. I'm going to go C plus B minus on that for 10 bucks. That's a great everyday table red. Let's move on to the next one. Now I have to apologize about this one. I searched all over the place. Now this is one of those older wines that I had kind of tucked away in one of my racks, and I thought, you know, I need to find another kind of Tuscan. This is from Marima, sort of west of Tuscany, still in that area. This is Capanassi Rosa della Marima Toscana. So Marima's kind of developed its own little area, and that's where a lot of the Super-Tuscans come from. This is 80% Sangiovese, 10% Syrah, 5% Grenache, and 5% Canaiolo. This is from small vineyards. I could not find a price for this wine. I looked all over the website, I looked everywhere. I looked at my supplier's catalog. They don't have it anymore. I've had this wine for a while. I think I mentioned it's a 2008. So it's got 6 years on it. Small Vineyards is one of those distributors or importers that you either love or hate. As a buyer, sometimes you have a difficulty with them because what they do is they go around and they do these tastings all over the place, and then they get orders so that they can fill a container and then bring it over. They don't really commit in the sense that they don't constantly bring the same wines over. They have to fill a container or 2 containers and then they bring it over. So, you know, a lot of distributors are like get frustrated with Small Vineyards because they don't commit to a brand. I don't know, it's a real convoluted, sort of complicated thing. But they do have I've always felt they had kind of a knack for really bringing in some really good quality wines from time to time. I've just gotten this like mixed review about them from different people. So, that being said, I am just going to make an educated guess. This is around $15 to $16. Okay, this immediately has that kind of stinky sort of leather nose. A little bit of herbal, like dried herbs. A little bit of currants going on in the background. Let's see what we get on the palate. This baby still has quite a bit of acidity for 8 years old. Good strength, good structure. A little thin on the finish. Not really thin, but a little bit thin. You know, I'm getting a lot of cranberry and raspberry on this with a little backdrop of leather. I'm not even sure if you can get this wine. I just kind of threw it in there for the fun of it. So I hope I'm not like pissing you guys off or anything. But, you know, it came from my rack right over here where, you know, sometimes I get samples and they just kind of get lost in the shuffle and I like pull it out. Okay, let's give this a try. But what this tells me is that Small Vineyards does a good job of finding good values. I don't think this is more than $20 just from memory in the back of my mind. It's like, I don't think it's more than that. It has that classic Sangiovese Chianti sort of thing going on. I know it's got some other things in it, but it's got that nice acidity, good cherry, cranberry sort of thing going on, a little bit of leather, a little bit of earth, some minerality. I like it. I'm going to go B- on that wine for what it is. I mean, you know, it's crazy. I could go B- right in that area. I mean, it's 8 years old. No, 6 years old, sorry, 6 years old. And, you know, it still has a little bit, well, has at least 5 years of life left in it. Now, let's move on to the next one. So this is really a classic Super-Tuscan from San Felice. It is called Vigorello Toscana. It is 50% Cabernet Sauvignon, 45% Merlot, and 5% Petit Verdot. So they're getting, you know, they're planting some interesting varietals over in Italy. Far cry from the old days. What am I doing? I have no idea. Excuse me. I'm going to set that one aside. Got a little carried away. Reach down, and let's go for the one I decanted. Because when you're doing these big kind of, this is a $50 retail wine. Not that that makes any difference, but it's just telling me if they're demanding that kind of money, it might be a little bit bigger than, you know, just your average $15 to $20 wine. I don't know, I just took a guess. You know what, I never, okay, Vigorello, San Felice Vigorello, 2010, Super-Tuscan wine, $50. You know, what I'm saying is that it's never a bad idea to decant a wine. Never a bad idea to decant. And, you know, no matter what it is. I mean, you know, I don't expect you to decant a Sutter Home Merlot or anything like that. But, you know, when you're starting to spend, you know, over $20 to $30, maybe you want to think about, you know, breaking out the decanter. You know, it doesn't have to be that. It can be a pitcher. It can be anything you want. I think I got this as a gift for my birthday or Christmas. I don't know. I don't know if I've ever bought a decanter. Let's see what we get on the nose. A little bit of spice. Kind of interesting. You know, like a cigar box. Definitely some violets. I like that. I love it when you get like flower notes on the nose. A little bit of vanilla, cinnamon, nutmeg. Get a little black licorice for sure. Almost a meaty element to this, almost like venison or moose. I don't know. Well, I do know. I shouldn't say I don't know. That's kind of the sense it gives me, like a wild game sort of smell. Little tobacco. Let's see what we get on the palate. Wow. That is a young puppy. Very tight, but still at the same time very expressive. I get espresso bean, coffee, currants, spice, like that cigar box, that spice box thing comes through. A little bit of black olive, a lot of tobacco coming through, a lot of tobacco leaf. Interesting, like barbecue spices, like briquette almost, like the briquette's got, you drizzled some barbecue spice on the briquettes. Get, you know, like a bit into a briquette almost, has that kind of tarry kind of briquette thing going on, but there's some other spices in there too. You know, very interesting wine, a little bit of meat marinade going on in that wine. That's a big bad boy. You know, $50, not chump change. really not a wine you want to drink by itself. I mean, seriously. It's a big bad boy. Some tannins coming through on the backside. A lot of leather. You know, I'm going to have to go on this one, I think, for $50. It's a big spending. I know it's a lot of money. This thing will age for another 10 to 15 years. Right now, it's drinkable. Certainly has a lot of good flavors. Very complex. Long finish. I'm still getting that kind of barbecue spice, charcoal sort of thing going on in the finish. A little bit of meat marinade. It's good wine. It really is classic Super-Tuscan. I'm going to go A on that one. So, do you kind of gravitate towards Italian wines in the winter time? The fall and winter when you start drinking, start eating stews, you know, you do pot roast, you do roasted chicken, you do all these kind of comfort foods. Do you gravitate toward Italian wines? Let me know. Make a comment, please. Make a comment. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Cheers. And here's to keeping the snob out of wine.